Hello all, in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my experience with this router bit. It was kindly sent to me by Banggod for review, but it was one I was going to buy to try anyway, and depending on its performance, plan to buy several more. As you can see from the images, the router bit cuts a profile in laminated boards or hardwood, leaving a sliver of material that, when folded 90 degrees for a corner, creates a seamless outside radius, at least in theory. Plus, on boards over 15mm, creates a useful mitre internally for gluing. To set up in the plunge base, you zero the cutter to the bench top, then lock off the depth stop at that point. On my Bosch here, I have a micro adjust I can use after locking. This I back off 1mm, checked with a packer between the depth stop, then drop the depth stop back to the turret once again. If you don't have this Bosch afterlock micro adjust, just do the same process but with your plunge release. This then was the second ever test cut with this bit, and straight away they informed me of steps I was going to need to take for a good cut, and also presents an opportunity to address a couple of comments on my last video. The first thing of note cutting through this 15mm MFC, or melamine face chipboard, often known as Conti-board, is how well the bit actually cuts. Considering the bottom of the cutter for this 30mm radius version is some 48mm wide, its cut is not exactly quick, but it's really measured and never struggling, cuts really well. The second thing to note is, despite that, this bit seems to pull something rotten, determined to twist the router from your grip. This meant that despite my pushing hard against the rail, you can just make out the router moving away from the rail progressively as we go. It's not a disconcerting jerk the way it pulls away or anything. I think it's just the sheer diameter of the bit levering you away from the guide edge. This of course resulting in a cut path that isn't straight, and it needs to be. With the bit being too large to fit through the hole in my Bosch OFA guide rail adapter, I constructed my own and frankly more capable guide rail adapter covered in last week's video. Showing this same clip in that video, I had someone comment that you should never use the flat edge of a router base, always the round, as a statement of fact. So in case there's any confusion around this issue, I'll take this opportunity to say, well, that isn't true. In fact, the whole reason manufacturers put a flat side on a router base is to allow you to run up against a straight edge. The round edges on bases can be very useful if following a radius or running along a straight edge, particularly where your movement or view might be restricted, meaning you might want to turn the router as you machine for best hold. Or indeed, if you're using a bit that wants to turn your router. But using the rounded edge is not a must. If you have good front-on access, the flat edge can be much more predictable when using straight cutters like flutes. In the case of my Bosch GMF 1600 router, it has these clear plastic sub-bases which slightly sit proud of the router base proper. Anytime you attach it to the OFA rail guide or attach its underbase extraction, which I do quite regularly, you have to remove or loosen the screws holding the clear sub-base on. This can make it prone to movement or, if removed, meaning it needs to be recentered with the supplied cone. Something I rarely do, so using the round edge, sub-base not properly centered, would lead to an erroneous cut path as the base wouldn't be concentric. So that's why I nearly always use the flat edge. Many routers have a sub-base that sits within the perimeter of the base proper, and so such alignment issues aren't really a problem. So just use your judgment and your own experience with routers. And just to note, the circular part of the router base still wandered away from the straight edge. I did try it. It certainly needs holding in line mechanically. Another comment I got asked whether it would be preferable to use this router bit in a router table rather than in a plunge router as I'm doing. Now it's more than possible, but I don't think it's practical for what I intended to use it for. If you had a panel you just wanted to do one profile cut for one corner, say a nice curved riser on a bottom stair tread, then using a router table would be okay, especially if you've got a router table you can use a mitre gauge with or has a sliding carriage. I however plan to do 4 cuts in one long panel to fold into a box or unit. The issue becomes one of support, as once cut, the remaining slither of material is fragile, and along with that, one of positioning, perfectly aligning each cut. Imagine trying to do this on a router table with a sheet 2 to 4 meters long to eventually fold it into a unit. It's just not practical. Cutting from above with a plunge router seems to be better suited to this, hence why in this video, this is the method I'm trying to get to work. Let's get back to the progress with the router bit then, and here you'll see I'm making use of my new DIY rail adapter. Underneath the rail I have my piece being cut, sandwiched between 2 others. One at the back to see if we can minimise blowout, and one at the front just to help balance the router as we get going. So I had to stop the cut there, as despite efforts to brace the work, it is still being dragged off to one side, as you can see. Not a great start so far, is it? It's gone properly sideways. I thought it could be a good start to mill out the centre of the cut with a flute first, and then try a pass with the profile cutter. With less waste to remove, it might not have quite the same pull. Annoyingly, the slot is 9mm, and I only have 12.7mm flutes for the 1/2 inch collet and 6mm flutes for the router's 8mm collet. So I stick with trying a better brace for the work instead and continue with one pass cuts. Here I've swapped some 18mm melamine MDF, and again I have a support scrap out front and a breakout scrap at the rear which I've screwed down, and the piece being cut is clamped fast. This seemed to work brilliantly, but I'm running out of scraps of sufficient length to secure like this. Wouldn't be a problem on a nice new long panel, but I'm not sacrificing one of those yet. The money I make from YouTube in 3 months wouldn't nearly cover the cost of a 2.4 by 1.2 metre melamine MDF sheet, so trust me, I'll keep the good stuff for actual work. Still, the cut this time appears very good, nice and straight, nice and clean. Come on then Stu, let's have a look how it bends into a corner. Yeah, about that, this isn't going to go without splitting. The remaining material that'll form the outside radius here is 1mm thick. Clearly, that's too thick. I carefully reposition the pieces and recut, this time knocking about 0.4 of a millimetre off via the micro adjust. I doubt very much you can see that, but the verniers are saying about 0.6mm thick. So, will it bend now? Feels more flexible, but oh man, just doesn't seem to want to go past a certain point. And I think I already hear a cracking sound from somewhere. Still, another try, go on mate. And it's there, on one side anyway. Just got to repeat that with a corner clamp to hold it in place now. Much faff and precariousness later, as you can see, success, well sort of. Nice and smooth round with a neat inside mitre, flipped over and it cracked. I think though I have a way to sort this, so keep watching until later. It does kind of look good though, it spurred me to keep going, I'd really love this to work. I did a repeat cut in the same piece a little further along and another 1/10 knocked off, leaving just 0.5mm of melamine face. Any less than that and it would seem to me to be far too fragile to even pick up. Unfortunately, same result. The first side I paired together, went together nice, but when you try and bring the second side into line, crack. And I was trying to bend it so gently, it just seems once you've clamped one end, the stresses are too much on the other. You can see at the bottom there an attempt I made going to about 0.25mm. The router just spat the melamine out. And another there where it being so thin, it starts to kind of flap from the router bit motion and burst. Still, all part of the learning. Didn't film cutting this piece for some reason, but some 18mm melamine MDF, as you've just seen, just a narrower rip, again done at 0.6mm. It folded fine, albeit taking it slow and steady, so as not to crack it. Interestingly, I tried another piece of MFC Conti-board, about the same width of strip as this, cut at 0.6mm again, and it wouldn't bend hardly at all. These shards are what's left. I'll talk more about why I think that is near the end. Here I'm trying some alternating strips of some 12mm ply scraps. You can see I brace them underneath with tiny wedges between the dogs. This first piece I orientated the grain across the bend. As you can see, it just wants to caterpillar track, not bend at all. It is an unusual ply this though, I suspect very old stuff. It was gifted to me from a retired joiner. From the same weird ply, this time along the grain with the bend, it's got very little give. I wasn't expecting that at all. This third piece is your standard construction ply, the stuff with a pinkish hue, one side always seemingly speckled like beech. That speckled side, again grain orientated along the bend, bends beautifully. I wish I had some high quality birch or furniture grade to try. A thing to note with this 12mm is the cutter leaves you next to nothing to glue by way of the inside mitre. With this size cutter you clearly need a minimum of 15mm I think, 18 to 24mm being ideal. For my last experimental cut, a piece of solid wood, just poplar, nothing too adventurous. Certainly got a bit smoky, you know what I mean? Cut looked good, but again, along the grain, seemed unwilling to bend. The along the grain wood on both the ply and solid wood being a bit stubborn to bend, I give them a bit of a soaking with some warm water and drenched cloth, then go in with an iron. Shouldn't take much steaming to have them bend, just a minute or so with the iron. With the ply, it certainly had more give. I do the same with the poplar, good drenching with the cloth and a minute or two under the iron. I get a little corner clamp on to give me something to fold to, then slowly ease it round. The steam seems to work in making it pliable, but it's still resistant enough to not be able to get the mitre just right. I'll leave these clamped for a bit so they take shape and see if they'll seat more accurately later. On the subject of applying heat, I wondered how resistant to a low gas torch the melamine would be, with the aim of softening it up. Well, it wasn't at all. As soon as the burner went anywhere near it, it bubbled up. Should have known really. Although I've had this MDF melamine clamped up for a while, it's still quite stiff out of the clamps, so I tried applying some iron heat to it to see if it would soften up at all. Again, dry cloth to protect, and held on for about a minute. And by Jove, I think we've cracked it. This has made it really pliable, and the fold creating a nice curve, no problem at all. Taking this as the win, I decided to glue it together so we can have a proper look in a bit. Feeling confident with the heat process, I route out another piece of Conti-board. Before the heat, it feels as brittle as all the others. Let's see if it can't be improved with a bit of heat like the MDF. Yes, 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 nope, it's gone. It had plenty of heat, but I think I know why the chipboard isn't as compliant as the MDF. In MDF, the fibres that make up the board are tiny, microscopic almost. If you've ever cut any thin, you'll notice it becomes really pliable. The chipboard, however, as the name suggests, is made from chips of wood, much larger than those in the MDF, and whereas the MDF is sort of compressed together, the chipboard uses a resin to bond the chips, and this is what makes it so brittle, even at 0.6mm. The melamine layer I doubt is any more than 0.2 of a mil, so it's difficult to machine the chipboard away to leave just that. Makes me wonder how on earth they got this photo. Going back to the wood and MDF that were steamed and heated respectively, after being in the clamps, they'd clearly take the form more easily if you wanted to set about gluing. In the ply, while the steam makes it more compliant, the wood fibres, along with the thinness of the material, are making the curve bumpy and uneven. The other construction ply piece was great, so type of ply clearly is something to test before you commit. The solid poplar too will now naturally take the shape no problem, allowing for a good join. Again though, on each side where the gap allowing for the radius starts, there's a sort of hump, right where it goes from solid wood to gap. There's no way I'd have something that looked like that on any of my furniture, and it's not like there's enough material left there to sand and blend. The gap on the radius is about 2mm, so I thought I'd see if some 2mm rips of this stiff tall foam would help it keep the shape. It helped a little bit to shape the funny ply, but did nothing for the sort of humps at the curve on the solid wood. I think with solid wood, you'd just be better off doing a solid mitre and shaping after the fact. Last experiment here before my final thoughts, I'm applying some edge banding to the successful MDF melamine piece to get some idea of what a finished piece might look like. And I'm really just doing a quick botch here to get an idea. If this were actually for a piece, I'd probably go for a thick 2mm edge band and use a trim router to finish. Still, the end result does look pretty clean. After everything you've seen me go through then, would I recommend this router bit? God no. I mean, I haven't given up on this bit quite yet. I'd still like to try it again with some larger panels of melamine MDF. Heat definitely makes it easier, and I think making a jig to assist with folding, like you do with say steam bends, could be beneficial. That said, I like to recommend products from reviews that make life easier, a task more pleasurable or accurate, or one that does something unique. This bit doesn't really fit any of that. It's hard work and requires a lot of additional messing about to get a look that frankly you can get using other means. I mentioned how with solid wood you'd be better off just machining round corners. With ply or MDF you do just as well to take the same approach, machining an outside radius to a standard mitre joint and then say doing a staggered veneer wrap for a seamless look. And this approach can go for melamine too. You can buy very thin Formica sheets that you can adhere yourself to a carcass and using iron heat to bend it more easily as you go. Even a linoleum wrap would be a better way to go, I think. Plus, even if using this router bit, applying heat makes the melamine MDF malleable enough on a wider board, you're still left with the fragile material on the radius at each corner. So what do you think would be the best way to fill that? My first thought was expanding foam, but I've yet to see a dispenser that could reliably be shoved down a 2mm gap. Does such a thing even exist? I suppose you could use liberal amounts of PU glue maybe, as that expands the gap fill, but would you be confident it'd do it evenly enough? I'm not sure I would. Or you could perhaps resin pour down the gap. That would certainly fill it and give robust corners. I think it'd be a nightmare though. I'm not sure the juice is worth the squeeze. And honestly, it pains me to say this, as I really wanted the router bit to make an outside radius in melamine straightforward. I'd already come up with several designs for furniture pieces in my head using it. But look, far be it from me to claim the final word on this. You might nail it. And if you do, don't keep it to yourself, eh? So if you want to try it for yourself anyway, the product links will be down below. This is the bit I was sent. It's available in the 1/2 inch shank with the 30mm radius I've been trying and an 18mm radius. Forget the 18mm. Don't do it to yourself. That's too tight a curve for this method. How they got those demo shots is a mystery and I think they might have cheated. As you can see, the one I got cost £18, the 18mm diameter one more like 15. But before we go, I did spot this product page though. Same router bit style and a bit cheaper. They do shanks at 12.7mm or 1/2 inch for your routers and 12mm for your CNC mills, and with the 18 and 30mm diameters. But more importantly, they do this, the 50mm radius bit. At this radius, it might actually work much better, as the larger the radius, the less stress on the board. Maybe this video needs a part 2. Mind you, having said that, you'd still have the gap filling problem. I just don't know. If you want to see a review of some router bits that do work from Banggod and do their job exceptionally well and might even save you money, then check out my reviews on the compression bits and also the replaceable carbide blade bits. These have been working really well for me and show no sign of dulling. I'll make sure the reviews pop up at the end, as well as link the videos and router bits in the description below. That covers it then, I think, well, at least for now. I'm out of any more scraps for more tests. Fire away with any thoughts below on what you've seen or ask any questions. Please like the video if you did, sub if you aren't already, and as always, if you made it this far, thanks for watching.